Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how you can visualize elevation data with Google Earth Engine. If you're not familiar with Earth Engine, check out the playlist in the link in the bio and it'll kind of give you some background as to the software we're going to be working with. It is a browser-based remote sensing application where you can access data and process it using Google's fancy computers, which is really neat because it allows you to do the processing in browser instead of having to rely on your hardware in order to perform remote sensing analysis. I only recently found out how to do this type of visualization, so I wanted to share it with you. It's just a few steps, it's really fast, and it makes a really neat looking map. So let's jump into the code space and I'll show you how I did it. If you've not had a chance to read my blog, I would encourage you just for a moment to go check it out. We talk a lot about the tools and applications that I use in a lot of these videos, but I'm able to go into more detail and provide more resources for you. So if you're ever curious as to where these resources that I recommend reside, or even additional resources that I find throughout the week as I'm working on these videos, you definitely want to check out my blog. You can also subscribe to the mailing list there, which I would highly recommend because all it does is take the digest of blog posts that I usually create on a Friday or a Saturday, and I send them out so that way you can read them over the weekend. I understand it's difficult to keep up with a blog throughout the week or keep going back. What I have done is just whatever I write, whatever I put together, whatever I find valuable that week, put it in a nice little digest and I send it out every Friday or Saturday. So if that's something that interests you, especially if you're in the geospatial field or the technology or the development field, it's definitely a resource that I wish I had, and now I'm giving it to you for free. Just subscribe and I think you'll really get some use out of it. I'm actually using a tutorial that's on the Earth Engine documentation. If you want to see it, I put a link to it as well. It's super easy to follow and I'm using their example line for line and explaining what's going on. So now that we're in the editor, the first thing that we're going to be doing is I listed out here where the walkthrough is, so if you want to go check it out, you can do that. Super simple, super easy. And the first thing we're going to be doing here is loading in our map image using the constructor .ee. There's a lot more documentation on the arguments that this accepts, so you probably want to go read up on that depending on the application that you're building. Today we're using some NASA data from the Shuttle Radar Topographic Mission, and you can read up on more and I'll show you how to get more information on this in just a second. Basically, this is free to use data that you can download via USGS, but since we have access to the library within Earth Engine, we don't actually have to download it, we can just use it here in browser. So we're actually loading this image in using this constructor, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to update our map view. We're going to be centering this around the Grand Canyon, and the next thing we're going to be doing is adding our map layer to the map using map.addLayer, and then we're loading in the map image, which is this. So I'll go ahead and run it so you can see what it does. Essentially it zooms us to the area and then allows us to see this. Now it's kind of hard to see right now. You have this layers option here. You can actually undo or redo the opacity so that you can kind of see what's going on, but we're going to fix this. We're going to make this look much nicer. The way we're going to do that is by getting into the metadata of this image. So what we're doing now is we're sending our image variable to the console to then get information about the image itself. So we're going to go ahead and run that. So it does our same thing, it loads our map layer, and then what we can see is here we have all the types of images, we have the bands, we have the properties. This goes into detail as to exactly what we're looking at, and so if you ever need to know what you're working with, you can always find out provider, anything like that. You can go to the provider URL. Everything that you need to be able to work with this data should be in here. But what we're really looking for in here is a way to be able to create a custom visualization. So what we know is we can work with our data using a min-max of 3000. Now by default, Google Earth Engine puts everything into grayscale. That's what you're seeing down here. And what we're gonna do is basically just shrink that range down to 3000 maximum grayscale values. And so that's what it looks like. So we're adding a map, a layer. We're gonna call this layer custom visualization. And basically what we're telling it is from this image, we're going to set a min-max of 3000. So we're gonna go ahead and run this now. We're still printing this out here. And as you can see, this gives us a much clearer picture of what we're actually looking at. So like we did before, we can actually turn this layer off and then we can kind of turn this on and off to see, okay, this is about what we're working with, this is what it looks like. And then the final piece, super simple, super easy. So now you already have elevation data, you have a min-max, you have the ability to know what you're doing. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do another one where we add it to a layer, and then what we're gonna do is we're setting the min-max, and then we're adding in a custom palette. So now we're gonna call it custom palette, and when we run this, you should be able to see it runs like this. And so now what we have is we have a palette within our image that we're basically laying over the existing values that show us the lowest elevations here and the highest elevations here based on a scale of 3,000. So what you would need to do if you're going to use this for any type of other purpose is you'd want to find a proper way to tell your readers what they're actually looking at here. So you can't say this is feet. It's just a visualization so you can actually see the difference. What we're showing is difference right now. We're not actually showing any significant value. Now what you can do is you can go and create a legend, and you can go and create a way to show people what that value is later on. This is just a quick way to get elevation data visualized within Google Earth Engine. So it's really as simple as that. If you are unfamiliar with Google Earth Engine, it's something that I was working with a long time ago on YouTube, and I stopped, did some other types of videos, been working with Mapbox lately. If you haven't seen some of the Mapbox tutorials that I've done lately, I think you'd really like them, especially if you've been working with web apps like Google Earth Engine. But all that to say, it has changed a lot since when I first started using it. There's a lot of different things that have come up, and one of them are these image constructors. So if you're looking at some of the old videos and you're kind of curious as to maybe what has changed, you definitely want to read the documentation. Their documentation is so detailed, it has so many great examples. If you get stuck on one of the earlier tutorials, walk through the documentation, because more than likely they've added features that have maybe removed steps that are now redundant. So check those out. My plan is to eventually update those original tutorials. They still work. The bones of those tutorials are fantastic. It's just they need some detail adjusting. Have you ever visualized data using Google Earth Engine? I'd love to hear what sort of projects you've been working on with this. When I was doing my research and looking at other videos, there's a ton of other resources out there for doing work like this, but I'd really like to know what you've been doing with this technology. I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you if you're trying to visualize elevation data using Google Earth Engine. As always, follow me on Instagram at Maptical, or follow my blog. There'll be a link in the description down below. That's how you can read up on some of the things that I do here that don't quite make it here, or you can read them in detail or get more resources. Again, I'm going to put a link to the code in the link of this, but it will be on my blog. So if you want to get this code, you'll have to go to my blog and get it there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.